Welcome to Ladders. I'm FTW's Christian DeAndrea. He is a Rhode Island scumbag, Mike Yaj, Boyaj. And Yaj, how you doing after a grimy week 3?
I'm doing all right. You can't let the bad football ruin a great weekend. So, unfortunately for my Patriots, didn't look so great with 5 turnovers and a loss to the Steelers. But like we said, it was still football. We still had a great weekend. Can't complain.
Yeah, nothing quite as bad as losing to the Cleveland Browns when your quarterback forgets how to play the game of football. Cleveland locked Jordan Love up in hell. And my only regret is I wasn't at the bar to watch the dairy-fed Packers fans absolutely lose their minds at the end of that one. Let's move on to the ladders. Ladders work pretty simply. All you got to know is that we're going to take guys rising up those waiver wires, and we're going to compare them to the guys you should or maybe should not drop them for. We're going to start with a guy that you brought up last week, a guy you saw as a keeper, a deep bench stash. 3 targets, 3 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Luther Burden III, Chicago Bears. Now, Luther Burden right now, 11% owned. Would you pick him up if it meant dropping 17% owned Calvin Austin?
Yes, I would. I think that Burden has more potential to be an explosive player in this offense. He was chosen by Ben Johnson for a reason in the draft. I think Ben Johnson wants to get him more involved week after week. And I think that this is definitely a receiver that we should be keeping an eye on. Calvin Austin, on the other hand, he doesn't really seem like he's running away with his opportunity. And again, he's attached to an older Aaron Rodgers in an Arthur Smith offense. And I'm all set. I'd rather stick with Ben Johnson and Luther Burden's potential.
Look, I think it's just too many mouths in Chicago right now. Luther Burden is great, but still at the same time, only 8 routes, less than 30% of the team's offensive snaps, whereas a guy like Calvin Austin didn't run a ton of routes, but did get a lot of targets from Aaron Rodgers, 5 last week. Rodgers likes him with those contested catches. He's willing to target him, and I think we know who wins when you bet butt heads with Aaron Rodgers and a coach. Rodgers is going to do what he wants. That means Austin's going to be out on the field. Steelers are probably going to have to kowtow to him a little bit, and I think Austin ultimately has the more stable floor as a result.
Okay.
Next man up, 31% owned, Kareem Hunt, running back, Kansas City Chiefs. You dropping Kareem Hunt to pick up Luther Burden?
Yes, I am. If this was Kareem Hunt from 2019, yeah, no way am I ever dropping him, period. But I mean, this Kareem Hunt is a shell of what he's more of a name than anything else at this point, I believe.
Yeah, don't pay for name value. Kareem Hunt entirely touchdown dependent, not getting a ton of reps. He's old. He's in his 30s right now, which is ancient. He only has 4 catches in 3 weeks, and he has yet to average more than 4 yards per carry in a single game. So the lights are dimming for Kareem Hunt. Yeah. He's going to have some big weeks maybe down the line where he'll get those goal line carries, but he's not the Kareem Hunt of old. Let him go. Go with the higher upside of Luther Burden. Next man up, finally, a guy that we talked about last week, 43% owned after a big week 2, quiet week 3. Troy Franklin, wide receiver, Denver Broncos.
I'm going to have to stay with Franklin here. I know I'm becoming a broken record when it comes to Troy Franklin, but I mean, he's definitely getting the opportunities. He had a bad week. It's going to happen. I mean, it happens to the best of them. Obviously, Courtland Sutton was the main focus of the offense with Denver this week. But again, week to week, that's not a guarantee. Burden, once again, he's not getting the same opportunity as Franklin. And let's also keep in mind, Franklin, second-year player, and he was with Knicks back in his Oregon days. So there's a real rapport with those two moving forward. Whereas Williams is still getting used to playing with Luther Burden. So there's potential there, but I'll take Franklin in this case.
Agreed on that one. Franklin stymied by that too high safety coverage by the Chargers. Not a lot of teams are going to be that effective. What we saw in week 3 was Bo Nix targeted him a lot closer to the line of scrimmage. And we saw a little bit of that old Oregon Bo in that regard, where a lot of short, then long passes instead of the more realistic bomb lobbing that he had in his rookie campaign. Those deep throws did not work out, with the exception of the 4th and 2 bomb to Courtland Sutton. So I think we are going to see the passing game dialed back a little bit more, where a guy like Troy Franklin, whose great run after catch skills, can thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Next man up. Oh, man, we have talked about before. 4% owned in Yahoo. About to go up after one of the biggest fantasy weeks of the year. Tre Tucker, wide receiver, Las Vegas Raiders. Now, would you take Tre Tucker over 5% owned running back Chris Rodriguez of the Washington Commanders?
Okay, this is a difficult one because we're not still really sure what the preference is for the running back by committee at this point with Washington. If Chris Rodriguez can grab that Austin Eckler role and kind of hang on to that, then I'm not really taking a chance with Tucker yet. I know he had an amazing week this past week, but it comes down to, why did he have an amazing week this week? What's going on with Brock Bowers? What's going on with Dontayvion Thornton? What's going on with Jacoby Meyer? I think I'm going to stick with Rodriguez in this case, only because if he locks down that Eckler role, he would be more consistently providing points for your fantasy team.
We saw a lot of Chris Rodriguez early, but he only ended up playing one fewer snap than Bill Krosky Merritt. And what we saw from Krosky Merritt was a lot more efficient running. Chris Rodriguez, fewer yards than were expected, fewer yards after contact. Logic suggests he's not built to last in that offense when there's a more efficient back in front of him. So I don't see him ever really taking on that RB1 role. I don't see him necessarily being the same kind of receiver or blocker Austin Eckler was. On the other hand, you got Tre Tucker, who's Mr. Inconsistent. Here's how he's done the week after he's had 5 catches in a game. 2 catches, 5 catches, 2 catches, 1 catch. No consistency. Very dependent on the game. And we know Geno Smith can absolutely sling it in garbage time. We know who he's going to be going for now. It's going to be Tre Tucker. I think it's going to be a little bit more matchup dependent as to whether or not you want Tre Tucker or a more stable floor in a guy like Chris Rodriguez, even if he is backing up Bill Krosky Merritt.
Right.
Next man up, about 25% owned, Los Angeles Rams running back Blake Corum. Would you take Tre Tucker over Blake Corum?
Again, this is going to come down to need. Personally, I'm going to lean towards Corum if I don't have a plethora of running backs available, especially on my bench. It sounds like he's getting more and more work with the Rams now. Granted, it is in a relief role, but still, he's getting some run that he wasn't getting last year. And more importantly, some of that run is coming at the goal line. So we do have the opportunity to punch one in every so often. And again, it's just Tucker's inconsistency is really what I have trouble choosing him over both of these running backs. But again, I'm going to lean Corum here in this case.
Yeah, I love Blake Corum. I love what he's been doing this year, crushing the advanced metrics, 3.2 rushing yards over expected per carry. He just matched his career high in carries, but he's playing less than a quarter of the snaps in that offense. Yeah. So there's always going to be a little bit of boom bust. He really needs to rip one open in order to get there. So in that regard, he and Tre Tucker are more similar than you might expect. I think I want Tre Tucker's PPR ability, the chance to pad some more points onto your score, compared to Blake Corum really just waiting to see if Kyron Williams gets hurt. At the same time, it's a tough decision to make. I'm going to lean Tucker on this one, but honestly, I think this one can go either way. And finally, a guy who is somehow 34% owned despite doing not much of anything for a Houston Texans offense that has just outright stunk, Christian Kirk. Would you take Kirk over Tucker?
Give me Tucker in this case. Kirk as a slot receiver in the past has been really valuable. I think that's why you see his ownership percentage so high, because quite honestly, he's been hurt for most of the season anyway. So he really hasn't done anything even leading up to the injury. I mean, we couldn't really get a gauge during the preseason because, again, it's preseason. And once the season's gotten going, nobody on Houston has really done anything at all. So I'll take his inconsistent production over no production from Christian Kirk whatsoever.
Yeah, I just have one note in this, and it says, Jesus, what is wrong with the Houston Texans? So that's pretty much all you need to know. And hopefully I remember to go back and bleep that out so we can actually post this on USA Today.
That would be great.
Next man up, a man near and dear to our Rhode Island scumbag hearts. Former second-round pick from Bill Belichick. Had the standard Bill Belichick drafted wideout career arc, in which, I mean, he sucked. And now he is arguably the wide receiver one for the Kansas City Chiefs. That is Tyquan Thornton, the speed merchant, who had one hell of a contested catch, almost back-to-back incredible catches last night in MetLife Stadium. Only 2% owned. That number is going to go way up. So let's start at the bottom. Would you take him over 5% owned Alec Pierce of the Indianapolis Colts?
All right. In this case, I will take Tyquan Thornton over Alec Pierce. I've done the Alex Pierce experience before. He is going to have one or two great games where you're just going to be kicking yourself why he's sitting on your bench versus starting him. You're going to get those 4 or 5 games where you start him in hopes of getting that game and you don't get it. And between Josh Downs and Michael Pittman, and now you got Warren there too, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and you also have Jonathan Taylor. So in this case, I'm going to go with the person who's needed more by their team right now, which is Tyquan Thornton. And I do like seeing a former Patriot finally get his due. A lot of those receivers have had a rough go one way or the other. And, it's nice to see one of them kind of overcome what they had to go through, and looks like he's finally enjoying himself playing for Kansas City.
Yeah, the growth has been just amazing. Because here's a guy who's really just kind of a straight line speed merchant at Baylor. It was kind of a weird second round pick, but the Patriots needed wideout. Kind of talked ourselves into him. And he has more catches in one game in week 3 than he did the entire 2024 season. Now, granted, playing with Patrick Mahomes will do that to you. We're seeing a lot more out of this kid than we ever knew was possible. Those contested catches, that twisting the body, getting back to the ball, things he just didn't do as a Patriot, he's now doing as a Chief. I don't know if that's a rising tide situation or it's just getting the hell out of Foxborough, but he's been almost reliable. And we saw him, really kind of thrive in the role that the Chiefs had Marquez Valdez-Scantling play. He's being targeted about 24 yards downfield. He is that deep threat the Patriots hoped he could be. And he's got one of the best deep ball quarterbacks in the game. So, yes, I do think this is sustainable. You're going to have 3 more games before Rashee Rice comes in. But guess what? Rashee Rice is a guy who plays closer to the line of scrimmage. You still have Tyquan Thornton to take the top off the defense. And that is a very valuable asset for Kansas City, especially as they bounce back from that 0-2 start. So give me Tyquan over Alec Pierce, even though Alec Pierce outperforming expectations despite all the Daniel Jones of that offense. He's been kind of a go-to guy in the intermediate range. He's making some big catches. I think his floor might have been bumped up a little bit by bringing in Daniel Jones, which is wild when you consider he had one of the more electric deep ball throwers tossing past to him the last 2 years, Anthony Richardson. But as we all know, Anthony Richardson is kind of garbage. Next man up, about 20% owned. Running back for the Miami Dolphins, Ollie Gordon. Do you want Ollie Gordon on your roster or do you want Tyquan Thornton?
In this case, I'm going to stick with Thornton, surprisingly enough. I've seen a lot of Miami games this year. Just by circumstance, I've been subjected to watching them, and Gordon's really not going to be getting that many opportunities at the goal line. It's as simple as that. Yes, Devon Achane clearly cannot handle those short yardage situations. Gordon is built for those. That offense is just not really going anywhere this year. And yes, he had a good game against Patriots, but that meant nothing. I just don't think he's going to have the opportunity versus, like you said, with Thornton, he's playing that Marquez Valdez-Scantling role. Sounds like he's going to have a role all year long. So give me the more consistent production in Thornton.
Yeah, I like Ollie as a low-cost daily fantasy guy because he is very touchdown dependent. Now, you're not going to give those carries to HN because he weighs about 180 pounds. He's a little wisp of a guy. A guy like Ollie Gordon is big. He's bulky. He can get those tough yards, but he doesn't have breakaway speed and an offense built for speedsters. He doesn't really add too much to the passing game. And ultimately, I think that as defenses get accustomed to the Miami running game, understanding that they're isn't really that deep threat anymore, Tyreek Hill.
Right.
I think it's over, buddy. I feel like stacked boxes are going to be the death of the Ollie Gordon experience in Miami. As big of a bruiser as he is, I don't know if he has that quickness, that lateral mobility to really make things pay off. Okay, last guy today, we got Tyquan Thornton. versus another running back, another RB2, a guy who had a big week 2, faded back into obscurity in week 3, Rachaad White, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you want Tyquan Thornton on your roster, or do you want Rachaad White?
All right, this one's a coin flip. It depends on what you need and how your roster's made up. If I am chasing the running back production, I'm not dropping White for Thornton, and it's same thing on the other hand. If I'm looking for an upside receiver and I have a glut of backup running backs or guys who you might be able to spot start, I would rather go with the receiver in that case. So again, this is going to come down to roster construction. More so what you need. If this was me personally, the way my rosters are typically constructed, I would probably go with White because I tend to stash a bunch of those receivers at the end of my bench anyway, and he would just be joining the stable of guys waiting to go off.
I would go the other way with it. I think Rachaad
Okay.
White right now is an injury stash only. You only want him as the handcuff to Bucky Irving because he's very clearly the RB2 there. His numbers aren't great. He's fast, but he's more of a straight line fast guy rather than a kind of a jitterbuggy guy. Also, 4 targets, 4 catches, 5 yards. This is not a guy who's going to be crushing you out of the backfield in PPR leagues. I would rather have the upside of a Tyquan Thornton, the ability to know and understand that one play could get you 10 points from that guy compared to the fact that Rachaad White might need, 3 full quarters to get there on a good day. So, no, injury stash only on Rachaad White.
That's a fair point.
All right, let's go on to our new segment. Over the past 3 weeks, we've picked out some guys kind of out of a hat, guys we like that have come through from the bottom of those percent owned standings. Luther Burden is there. Troy Franklin is there. Trey Benson doesn't really qualify, but I mean, I told you last week, go out and get him before things go wrong with James Conner. What happened, Yash?
Things went wrong with James Conner, and he is taking a year-long vacation from the NFL now.
Yes, and you hate to see it because James Conner is one
Yeah.
of those good guys, but he was also more of a plotter. I think this makes the Cardinals' offense a little bit more explosive, a little more interesting, and they actually need some playmakers there because Marvin Harrison Jr. Appears to be trying to sabotage things from within. With that said, let's talk about our stash picks, guys that are 10% owned or fewer in Yahoo leagues. For week 4, my guy, Dontayvion Wicks. He's only about 3% owned. The Packers wideout got 4 targets yesterday, which doesn't seem like a lot, but then you realize, no, that tied for the most among non-running backs. The Packers offense was a disaster. They were down 40% of their starting offensive line. Myles Garrett wrought havoc on Jordan Love, who could not set his feet and throw. But when he did, one of the guys he trusted was Wicks, who got more targets than Jaden Reed. Was right up there with Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden long gone by now, but you can go get yourself Dontayvion Wicks and sleep well with the knowledge of knowing the Packers offense won't be that bad because, well, they get the Cowboys next, and that's basically a free run for everyone involved. And, Dallas doesn't have Micah Parsons anymore because they traded him to the fucking Packers. Yash, who's your stash and go pick?
All right, don't laugh. I don't want to hear him a homer. I truly think this is a guy who is somebody we want to put at the end of our benches. Kyle Williams, 4% owned. New England Patriots wide receiver. He was their round 3 draft pick. This guy is electric. He just isn't there yet in terms of grasping the offense. He's gotten 2 opportunities to even get out in the field and get a target. He's caught both of them when he had to. It's just simply, he's just got so much talent. He's just not there yet in terms of readiness. But at this point, nobody's really running away with it with the Patriots receivers. Diggs doesn't look like the Stephon Diggs of old. Pop Douglas doesn't seem like he's going to be the solution to an every down receiver. And Kayshon Boutte, he's been serviceable, but we all know that Kyle Williams has better raw skills than Kayshon Boutte does.
Up here, Boutte here, Williams here.
So I'm willing to stash him. Throw him at the end of the bench. Maybe by week 6, week 7, all of a sudden you got a wide receiver 3 on your hands. So, again, we're not finding a top 15 receiver at this point. So let's, keep it under expectation and just, take a shot with this guy.
I mean, a bold move to trust a deep threat in an offense that starts Morgan Moses, the worst right tackle in the league, the guy who single-handedly jump-started TJ Watt's otherwise underwhelming 2025 by just letting him turnstile his way right to Drake May. But Drake May wants to air it out. He's going to be able to escape pressure and throw downfield.
Yep.
Yeah, I like Kyle Williams. Let's see what he can do, right?
Fingers crossed.
All right.